Hola, I'm Elias Torres, co-founder and CTO of Drift. You are listening to the American Dream podcast. Did you know that Drift is part of just 2% of VC-backed startups led by Latin American founders? Well, I'm on a mission to change that. On this show, you will hear from leaders who have achieved their own version of the American Dream. We'll talk about what the process looked like to get there, the obstacles they faced along the way, and the work we still have to do to build the new face of a diverse corporate America. Bienvenidos a todos to the American Dream podcast. Today, Diego Panama joins me on the show. Diego is the Chief Revenue Officer at Olo, an on-demand commerce platform powering the restaurants industry's digital transformation. Prior to Olo, Diego spent 8 years at LiveRamp, where he helped the team grow from 30 to over 1,500 employees, from $50 million to $500 million in revenue. Diego has seen a lot of success. Very proud of you in your career, but all of this work was in pursuit of one goal. It started with the pursuit of one, and that goal was to become an American citizen. So I want to talk about that today. I want to talk about what that pursuit looked like and how others can pursue their versions of their American dream and what the next big goals are for Diego. Diego, welcome to the show.
Elias, thank you so much for having me. It's real pleasure and honor to be here, and real pleasure and honor to get to know you a little bit better too. So thank you for having me.
Yeah, no, my pleasure. This is a podcast. You know, a lot of podcasts are like with fancy celebrities. This podcast is only with hardcore immigrants, hustler, Latinos, underrepresented that are out here trying to achieve our American dream. That's the kind of celebrities I bring on the show.
I love it. We get the job done.
We get the job done. That's what immigrants do. So where'd you grow up?
So I grew up not too far away from you. I grew up in El Salvador, and in San Salvador, the capital. And I came over when I was 18.
Wow. Same thing. So I came when I was 17. What was your childhood like?
Yeah. So I grew up in El Salvador. You remember, the 80s, Civil War. So that's a theme. But I grew up in, a very nice, comfortable family. Like, I was lucky that, we had food, we had a nice house, I had a good education. Even though we had this backdrop of the Civil War around us. So I had a nice childhood, something that I remember, and it's what we're going to talk about today. Since I can remember, like, when you ask me what did I want to be when I grow up, I would say I want to be an American citizen. I wanted that passport, like the blue passport. And I think a lot of that is my dad's influence, that he just recognized that there'd be a lot more opportunity for me if I could get out of El Salvador, and we can talk about that as well. But I like to say that almost everything I've done since I hit 8th grade. I remember 8th grade was critical because that's when your grades started counting for university applications. So that's when I buttoned up. It's like, okay, now if I want to get to the US, I have to get good grades. So everything I've done was very deliberate to figure out how I could get that blue passport. So that was a little bit of my childhood. I'll tell you one that had a big influence on me. There was a big event, and when I was probably about 15 or 16, that also had a big impact on me, which is on a Friday afternoon. Dad comes home and tells my mom and my sisters that we have to leave the house because the bank is likely gonna take it over next week. And I mean, my mom had no idea, and that's a separate story. But the shock and the trauma, and we had to move to a tiny little apartment that we're lucky my grandparents had. That just gave me kind of this ambition and this hunger for financial security that stays with me till today. So that was I had a beautiful childhood, really focused on education, but no shortage of economic kind of shocks, and that was just a big one that really influenced everything I've done since.
Wow. It's amazing the parallels that you and I have. Um, it, my mother, the house that I lived in, so I don't know how it compares to your house, but I found out the year that we came here that she was really borrowing that house from the guy that left during the coup, from the Somosas and the
Yeah.
Sandinistas.
Wow.
So a guy took off and he told my mother, like, take care, can you take care of my home, right? Most people would steal homes. My mother, I thought my mom borrowed, but my mom told me that she actually finished paying his mortgage. And then we lived in it. And then when the guy came back, he came knocking and he said, I want my house back. And so I did not have
Wow.
grandparents with an apartment waiting for me. And we literally, the church had an old lot and had in from the earthquake, and they said there's three lots that you can take because we don't want to lose that lot. But there was a house there, not a house, there was four pieces of wood with plastic around it and a plastic roof. And so that's when we went to see, like, right as we were getting the call to come to the United States. And my mom said, that's where we're going to live. If we, I was like, oh my God, we went from a house.
Wow.
I was gonna live in a house with plastic bags, trash bags, walls. I was, I was
Yeah.
like, so
Yeah.
same
Wow.
thing.
That's
17. I was 17
but
when I heard that.
it's
Yeah,
like that shock. It's like cold water in your face that, this home that is your world. Um, I kind of see my kids now in my house and just like it's theirs. It's like their house. And I love it, obviously. But then all of a sudden it's just not really yours.
you're right.
Uh, and you kind of have to like figure it out. So that I mean, probably similar to you, but like I wanted to be an American citizen because I wanted to have opportunity to make something of myself and to contribute. But that that drive to make money and have financial security has always been there, and I think that just really kind of like accentuated the need for that. Like for the longest time, I was like paranoid about losing this house. Like I would go sit with my wife and go through every scenario that could happen of where we could lose it. And, it's impossible. We're not going to lose this house, but it was just that sense of security. Like, yeah,
Yeah. No, but what a great feeling, right? That's a version of the American dream, right? Is to have that stability and to be in a country that you feel somewhat secure, that you can live in that house, you can pay for it. The bank or the government or the military is not going to come and take it, right? And ask you to move out, and you have built enough financial security to know that it's not going away, right? That's congrats. I think that's where all of us Latin Americans and immigrants come in wish. Question: I believe in role models a lot. Like, you said it was your father. Who are the role models? Do you remember vividly who is the person that said that you looked up and said they went to the United States, and why you built this association with getting the passport as your big most important pursuit?
so I mean, my father helped me with like education and curiosity, and it's like that's the path. Um, but I don't know if there was like a specific role models because all the examples I had, were the way I grew up, and I'm sure it's similar in Nicaragua. There's like a very small, very very wealthy community, and then the rest of the country, right? And I was exposed to that. Like all my like the friends and all the kids that I went to school with had like the blue passport, and they were going to Vail in Semana Santa, and I was very very far away from that world. But I just remember thinking, like, man, like they can do whatever they want. Like they can go wherever they want. Like they can study wherever they want. They can get whatever job they want.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if there was like a specific figure, but like a person that kind of
Okay, but
like
that makes
drove me.
sense.
But it was just like that concept of just opportunity and not being tied down because you weren't born in the right borders or to the right family. Right?
Right. No, I think that makes sense. That's clear though where he came. Now I can picture it, right. You were able to go to a good school where you got to see the wealthy, right, of the nation, and they all had already worked on that, right. I see people that come and they have their babies here, right, because they're wealthy and
Yeah.
they can fly them over with the visa, and then they get the passport and they go back, and so it's the setup. um, Vail. Wow, I didn't even know Vail existed till like a few
Oh,
years
yeah.
back. You know what I mean? It's
I didn't
like,
know what it was. I just knew that it was skiing and they would all go together. And I didn't see snow until I was 19.
yeah,
But
same.
yeah, it's
Yeah, I don't know. I was like
yeah.
22 when I saw snow.
Okay, yeah, yeah,
It's because I was in Florida for the first 6 years. So yeah, no, that's great. It's funny because sometimes I've been to Vail, and I see a couple of Latino families, right, and most of the ones I ran into are like Argentinian, or something like that, and
okay,
it's super wealthy. When I see them, I immediately go, wow, it's like a whole family speaking Spanish. They don't live here. They must be so wealthy to like come and do this kind of vacation. I was talking to a friend this morning, like as a Latino in Nicaragua, I never had vacations. I think I went to the beach for spring break, like one day,
yeah,
and go and come back. you know, that was,
yeah. Well, and that's the other thing I remember. On the weekends, El Salvador doesn't have like a tourism infrastructure. Unfortunately, like it's not like Costa Rica or it's so. If you go to the beach, it's pretty much like private houses. And so if you want to go, and we didn't have anything like that. But a lot of my friends, like you just see it, and it's like okay, so on the weekend, like we just stay home, and so it just creates this hunger, like oh, like and then that was part of connected to kind of like the American dream that unfortunately, if you don't, if you're, I don't think if you're not born into it in those, it's very hard.
yeah,
Whereas where I do believe that as imperfect as it is, I think the United States is probably one of the most incredible, amazing countries um, in history.
yeah,
And I do believe that for the most part, if you work your butt off and are curious, like you have the opportunity to do well here, and
yeah.
you have the opportunity to do like exponentially well. Like I know, you talked about that a couple podcasts ago. You can like lockstep your your family wealth like for generations and not just kind of like survive.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's very I don't know if it's unique to the U.S., but it's present in the U.S. and it's a big reason why I wanted to come here.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think the role models, and I think a big breakthrough to thank your parents, right, was that I've heard this before, right? Of I kind of sit in two camps, right? Like in some ways, I went to a public school here in Tampa, right? And that's what mom could afford. Uh, other immigrants, they will say like my parents worked so hard, so they would send me to a private school in another zip code, right?
Hmm.
The point it is, I don't know the specifics for you. Maybe you tell me, but there was an effort. There was a conscious effort that your father wanted you to be in this school, and that made a positive impact for you, right? Where you could have gone worse. You could have been negative and sad and depressed because you didn't have what the other ones have and you know we're a part of it,
Yeah,
but instead you turn it around into a good type of motivation for you, and they were role models that expose you to things. That's the thing that people don't understand, is that we need to be exposed to things. We need to see things to want them, to pursue them, to think that it's possible. If we don't have that vision, we have that immigrant hustle, but if it's not directed as a vector into the
yeah,
right direction, it, we don't we cannot achieve the dream.
yeah.
Yeah,
It's I hadn't thought about it, but I think that's a great point. Like exposure just so that you understand what's possible. Like it's kind of like hard to imagine that certain things are like I see some things now that I would have never, imagined possible. Um, Growing up, I was like, oh, like this is a thing. Like people do this. Like this is possible. So I think that the exposure is a great point. And yeah, both my mom and dad, like that, the budget for the school was like untouchable. Like
Yeah.
everything, like that was it. Yeah.
And that in a way just everything just builds on each other, right? It's like it's one step after the other, right? And you go into that school, you saw the passports, you saw the access that these wealthy people had, and you're like, well, the one thing, it's amazing, right? You observed one thing, they had this passports, right? And you're like, how do we do it? Um,
Yeah.
Question. So how did you get the passport?
It took me. So I got here, call it September of 2000, and I became a citizen on April 11th of 2017. So that about 17 years,
Wow.
and it's I'm very deliberate, like I'm pretty thorough. I had studied everything there is to study about becoming an American citizen. So, for example, like you go to top tier schools, you're more likely, and you start with a student visa that gave you 12 months, if I remember correctly, of on I think we call it practical training or on the job practical training. But if you went to a good school, you're more likely to be able to get a job that would sponsor you. In addition, if you studied um, math and science, those it was easier for you to get sponsorship for that because you had to get a job that was going to be related to what you studied. So in order to go from a student visa to a work visa, which is an H-1B, so I love history, but sorry, like that's a luxury. Like you're going to study math and economics, and I mean that's what I told myself. And so I ended up studying math and economics so that I could get sponsorship for an H-1B. Then again, I've done the research, and if you have a master's degree, your path to the green card accelerates. Like you're at a higher tier because you only have 6 years on that work visa, and after those 6 years, you have to go back to your country for at least a year. And all these were like my nightmares at night. It's like, what would I do? Like I have three, so I had to work for 3 years, go get a master's degree, and then I would have another 3 years to finally get my green card. And that's what I did. So I did math and economics so I could get an H-1B, and then I worked in like an economics related field, pushed to get a master's degree, and then I went to get my master's degree, and then from there we talked about it. I went to MIT Sloan, which is an awesome business school right in your backyard, and you have options and startups. I've always been curious, and I had worked with startups in my first job, but that was a luxury I didn't feel like I could afford. So I chose to go work for Microsoft and move out here to Seattle. Even though I love New York City, I love the East Coast. I never really been to Seattle before. I know you shared a similar story about Boston, and but I knew Microsoft sponsors thousands. It's probably one of the biggest at the time. It was one of the biggest sponsors of first. Make sure you get your H-1B. They weren't going to mess it up, and then second, translate that H-1B to a green card. So that's why I ended up at Microsoft so that I could make sure that I could make the transition from the H-1B to the green card. And once you get the green card, you're sort of like a little bit safer.
Yeah.
You still don't, like my wife makes fun of me because I'm always driving at the speed limit. I'm like I don't want, I feel like an outsider. Like I've got to be very respectful of everything in the country. But once you have that green card, you have like another, now you can change jobs without asking for permission, I would say. Like before, when you have an H-1B, it's tied to your employer. And, if you want to change jobs, there's a whole process and they must really want you for, it didn't seem feasible. So finally I got the green card. and then I could like had a little bit more freedom. So that's when I kind of like started joining. I joined startups. I joined LiveRamp early on because I had that security that that doesn't work. I can easily get another job. Like now, once you have a green card, it felt like a piece of cake. And then I kept like I was very aggressive with the process. So about three years later, we finally got the citizenship, and it was great. I'm so happy that I'm here, and if I choose to, I will stay here. Like nobody can kick me
Where
out.
where did you travel anywhere outside the United States after you got the passport? Where's the first place you went to?
Well, yeah, and I mean, you may remember, but like, there's a period of time where you can't travel, right? Like when when you're going from the green card to the passport, and you have to do an interview, and you have to do all these tests, you can't travel. So in that period of time, you're kind of hoping that like there's no emergencies at home, like so. Where did we try? We went to El Salvador. I chose to go into the country as an American instead of like
Yeah.
using, and you have to pay $10 or whatever the tourist fee is. But that was a moment for me. I thought that was pretty cool.
Um, it's what a journey. I mean, I think God, just so many thoughts. It's a beautiful, well executed, and I'm sure doesn't sound. It's not as easy as you making it sound, right? I mean, I understand, but it's like everything went perfect, and you behaved perfectly for it, right? In some ways, like the sequence of things, you, but you made the right choices, right? That made it work out. But it was 17 years.
Yeah, and to your point, I mean, it's a roller coaster, and I think like, I mean, this is all I wanted in life. So I was devoted 120%. Like I would stay up at night reading all the immigration sites, the law, like everything possible. So I knew everything that could go wrong. And yes, it's a roller coaster. I remember I was at Microsoft, and I think it was 2010, 2011. We were in the downturn. There were no unemployment rate was high. So I got the news that they couldn't justify my green card sponsorship because there were Americans who could do the job that they were sponsoring me.
Right.
And I went to my GM, which is like the partner of the group, like a seat, and I was bawling, like crying, I just remember, and he was so kind. And sure enough, like we figured out, and because my time was running out, because you have those 6 years. So I remember we had to go back and go through my passports at the time and count every day that I had been outside of the US so that we could add those so that I had a little bit more time. I ended up moving to sales because there was a role that would be easier to sponsor. I mean, it was,
People don't
we had,
understand. It's like I hear people that are natural, citizens, right, that have a lot of privilege and opportunity, and they're complaining about not getting promoted in 6 months. They're complaining about why they're not vice presidents, and they have no idea what you were. You're crying, you're worrying every minute about the lottery, the
the
sponsorship,
lottery. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
the company, right? Any moment the company fires you, right? It's like you're gone. You
Oh, the
start
company
over.
fires you, you go home.
Yeah, you go
Yeah. By
home.
the way, the lottery, there's 5 countries that are not eligible to apply for that lottery. Guess which one's one of those 5?
El Salvador.
El Salvador. Yeah. Yeah.
Because of
Um,
el Frente Faribundo Martín. Para liberación.
and there's already too many of us, and I don't know. But yeah, it's such a privilege to be a citizen of this country. Again, as imperfect as it is, we have a lot of work to do, but you just can't take it for granted. It's a real privilege, and
Yeah.
yeah.
No, it is so much respect, right, for you. You did compress what we read, right, in another podcast, that there's a study that takes Latino immigrants 6 to 8 generations, right, to
Hmm.
generational wealth, right? It's the study that we have, and you were able to do it in one, and you executed it flawlessly to be able to go from a student to a very successful top tech executive, wealthy by most means in this country, I would imagine, right? And capable, and now a proud American citizen, right? Through a lot of hard work, and you did it in one generation. So it's like,
Right back at you, Elias. Like you
much,
are a role
much
model for all
respect.
of us.
No, yeah, but we did it in parallel, right? And so, like, I just want to show
But we were in
that.
Boston at the same time, and had I known that, you, David, like, I had no idea. Like, but I was there between 2007 2009, so I think you're already there.
Yeah. So I was here in 2000, right? And I've been here since it's a 22 years now. And it's like, but that's the thing is like times are changing. And I mean, just even this podcast is rare, right? There's just not many podcasts of us and the success and the dream and the journey, right? Uh, I will say something though. I'm at an inflection point, right, in my life, and it's I've now become privileged, right? I am so fortunate, right, where I have that American passport. I have stability. My children can trust their homes, right? And my son went to a camp to Hawaii this morning, 4 a.m. in the morning. We dropped him off at the airport,
That's amazing.
right? And little side story. My children cannot get a phone until they build an iPhone app. Uh,
I
so,
heard you say that on one of your podcasts. I love
so
it.
he's the third one. He's almost 16 next month, and he still does not have a phone because he's being lazy and doesn't want to make the app. And so
Good.
he was trying to convince me, my wife and him, like that. What if I get him the phone and then we store it after the trip? So he's going on a trip with a couple of other teenagers without a phone, and we gave him his iPad, and he didn't want to pull it out with this information, and I'm like, you're privileged, but I'm not giving you a phone. You have to earn it. I'm not giving you this, oh, and then you keep it and you sneak it in. The answer is no. You've known for years. He's in ninth grade. My other kids did it at sixth grade, seventh grade. He's been wasting his time.
Yeah.
I'm like, you get no
Well,
phone.
it's I'm sure you think about like that sense of hunger and ambition, and again for me it came from just growing up with not a lot, being like seeing what I could have if I worked hard and having that experience. Like it gives me this drive, and I hope my kids are younger than yours. I hope they get it, and I hope they
Yeah.
contribute to society. I hope that yeah.
I think they're going to contribute to society, but what we share is very special, right? What we've gone through, what I was saying about my inflection point is that everything is so much easier for me now, right? And it doesn't feel the same anymore as when I used to go clean the offices with my mother, go to bed late, wake up. How do we pay this? I need this car. I'm buying this car off the street with a sign that said for sale at a grocery store, a Chevy Cavalier that cost us $900, and everything felt when you earn every single thing from scratch and that hustle. Um, it is a great feeling that I cherish, and that my children will not necessarily feel the same way, right? So
I was thinking about that because yes, it's hard, but it's fun, right? Like to put it all out there. You don't have a safety net. Like you either, I hadn't really realized or thought about it for a long time until you mentioned it. But yeah, if I would have gotten fired or laid off I wouldn't be here. So there's no safety net. You have to work your butt off, and you have to hustle, hustle, hustle. Um, and I was just thinking about how it's going to be different. I mean, it's good for my kids, for our kids. Like they have a great safety, and hopefully they use that to take things to a new level that
right.
we can't even imagine. but having that hustle, that like high, like just again, no safety net, and it's like you're the hunger. I'm grateful for that.
Yeah, and
Is your mom around, Elias?
what?
Is your mom still around? Is your
Yeah,
mom still around?
my mom is
So I
in
mean, she
Tampa.
must be incredibly proud of you. Like,
Oh
what a
no,
dream!
oh no,
That's
she
the
just
dream.
no, she just mostly keeps me grounded and like, pulls me by the ear and just makes sure that she's always like applying the wisdom techniques of like to stay grounded, to not do crazy things, to help, to relax, to really feel happy, to focus on the family and things like that, right? Because she always sees me with hunger and like ambition, and she's like,
Hmm.
it's just like relax, it's like not in a like a vacation way, but in a spiritual and in my soul, right? To be like, don't have to always be, I'm just too much fire, like I just, and so
Do you think? Yeah, I can appreciate that. Something I think about is it possible to be ambitious and happy at the same time? Because by definition, if you're ambitious, it's like you're not happy with the status quo. Like you want
yeah.
more or different. I've come to terms where like it's like they actually feed off each other, and I'm like happy when I am pushing.
Yeah,
But it's yeah.
I mean, I think that's the way we're built in as human beings, right? I just think that we always want more, right? It's like we're that's the way we're built, right? That's the way we're designed. It's just like if we have this meal, well, tomorrow we might want to have a different one or a better one, right? Or we see something, we want more. We cannot just eat the same thing or be in the same
Yeah.
place or wear the same clothes, or like we want more. It's just like it's built in, and so
Do
how.
you think? I don't think everybody's like that. I don't know if you agree with that, but for you, do you think it's nature or nurture?
No, we can argue about this. I think that every human being wants more. There's different degrees of more, but
Sure.
there is not one person that would just eat the same thing every day, wear the same thing, live in the same, wear the same shoe. I mean, we can say that there's people that look like that, Warren Buffett or Bill Gates or whatever, right? It's the same clothes, same shoes, whatever it is. But it's not true. I'm just saying everybody wants that they can get up and go try to get it is different, right? That they will do something about it, but that everybody wants something more. Everybody wants it. You think so? You think there's people? How many people in the world do not want nothing more?
Yeah, and maybe more is defined different for different people because not everybody wants more money.
No, no, no. I don't
And
mean
even if they
money. I,
don't,
I
like,
just mean
yeah, yeah,
like if, for example, if people didn't want more, they wouldn't have children, right? Because the minute you have a child, you're asking for something that you didn't have, right? And so the minute you have that, then you want more for your children, and then they're gonna ask you for
yeah.
more. I'm just saying,
I
it's just
agree with that.
we're just wired,
It's fulfilling. Everybody wants a sense of purpose,
yeah.
um, and that's never really done or
And that's
finished. Like
never really done.
you're always working.
Right, and so
Once
and
it's
so
done, you die. Like yeah, it's yeah.
exactly, and so that's kind of why we're doing this, and so now the question is, um, the journey, right, of getting the more is extremely satisfying. It's way more important than whatever you get on the other side. You know,
Hmm.
it's like my kids. The times. I mean, they're at a great time right now, but when we had to bathe them, when we had to take care of them, that was so hard, so tough, right? But those are the moments that define me as a parent, right? And now we're just having fun, right?
Yeah.
But we're gonna prepare them for the next stages, and we got to see. So it's I don't know why we are wired those way as immigrants to enjoy the challenges and the hustle. It's something that we want the American country, the U.S., to harness. Is what I want, right? To understand that there's so much power in the immigrant philosophy and the immigrant energy.
I mean, I believe that at its core, the United States is an immigrant country. Like, I mean, it is. There's no. It was built by immigrants. It was grown by immigrants. Like, it's. Uh, I don't know the official stats, but look at, yeah, at least in tech, I forget. Like, there's a very handsome share of CEOs that are immigrants, or kids of immigrants, and I think it has to do with that hustle and that ambition, and I've thought I think a lot about it. I think that, we talked about like what was surprising about that process. Reflecting now, what's surprising is just how emotional it is, because it's something that is completely out of your control, but has like absolute influence over your life and your outcomes.
Yeah.
Um, and so I think you learn not to take anything for granted, and that's in a way the definition of hustle, right? Like, you don't take it for granted; you fight for it.
I think that's something to highlight about the Latin American immigrants, right, or first generation, whatever, right, is that that might be. I'm connecting that to your journey, right, of everything that you did, compared to the struggle that I see in tech and employees, right, in that are starting their careers, in how many things they're worrying about that I don't see as a concern or worry, right? And we're trying to impart to them that it's like it's going to be fine, right? But that that grit inside, that emotion, that stress, that urgency, that necessity seems to be capable. Seems to me much more important than brain, talent, pedigree, or skin color, right? It's like it cuts through anything.
100%.
It's like it's the most powerful force, right? It's like I'm not going to complain if I didn't get a free lunch today, or I'm not gonna, because I am focused on getting my visa. That was you, right? You like what everybody complained at lunchtime. It went one side of your ear and it went out the other, and you were like, I don't give a shit. As long as I get it applied, and I need my 3 years right now, and that's all it matters. I don't care my
Talk
title.
about prayer. I remember so vividly. I was in the elevator, um, and we had free lunch the early days, and I hear two kids. I'll call them kids, but and they're like, "Can you believe that the vegetarian option today was tofu again?" I was like, "Are you kidding me?" Like, so many
Yeah,
levels of that, right? Like,
I
it's
just like explode when I hear that, right? And so and so that's the importance, right? That 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 necessity and that hunger makes us innovative, creative, persistent, tough, right? Looking for the most scrappiest solution to the problem, right? Because we have to win. We have no choice. We burned the ships. You came here. You don't want to go back. You were like, I don't want to go back. I don't want to go back. I have not
yeah,
gone back to Nicaragua. I was like, I'm not going back. I'm like,
yeah,
there's no way that I need to succeed here, right? That
yeah.
there was no way looking back. So no, this is great. I love this story. 17 years to achieve your dream of getting that passport. And you did that really well, not only getting the passport, but being extremely successful. Let's wrap up here. What is your next big goal now? You made it.
Oh, thanks for the time, Elias, and for the opportunity to share the story. Um, Hopefully, it's helpful to other. I mean, if you're an immigrant, you keep hustling. Like, it's just it's and be curious. I think that's the part, like the exposure part. That I really like you highlight that, because you be curious and learn what's out there, because you can have it. Um, for me, what's next? Like, I love the hustle. I'm still in it. Tactically, I want to get Olo, my new company, to $1 billion in revenue. So it's full focus there, and continue to build and grow. With my kids, I want them to grow. I have three young kids, 7, 6, and 4. I want them to grow to be contributing members of society, and I want them to want to hang out with me when they're in their 20s. So hopefully, hopefully we'll do that. And then I've always cared about having an impact, and more I'm getting educated and involved in our immigrant community, because there's a lot of work to do there with the community and educating folks outside of the community. So that's kind of how I think about what's next. But continue to work really hard. Like that's I mean I think that's fun for me. So
Yeah, absolutely. I think that that's the journey that we now, that's the responsibility that we carry, and of how do we help others, right? How do we lift others as we rise? I'm doing different things, and just meeting people and exposing myself. There's a lot of need out there, and that's a good thing. But I'm trying to transform my ambition, be able to channel it into the right thing, to feel that again, right? And solve big problems that people have. And we need more. I think you being here, it's like you were here not too far from me, right? And people are just not aware who's around, who's successful,
hmm
what did they go through. And so you're a role model for many. People are listening. I know a lot of people are in that visa journey, right, of getting that,
yeah.
and working at places. So hearing you should be encouraging that it's
You
possible.
know, I'll put in a plug on something that I'm learning. But if you have a green card, you should be working your butt off to get that citizenship, because that's how we're going to make a difference. More of us vote, more of us participate in society, and you'll be surprised, but there's a very meaningful number of people out there that have a green card and just kind of like sit pretty. Like it's like I don't, doesn't change my. I actually it does. Like go get your American passport. It's going to take you 1 to 2 years, but get it going.
Absolutely. No, it is something that, without getting political or philosophical, it's like I would pay respect. I pay respect to this country because this country allowed me to become who I've become. And no other country accepted me and invited me and gave me this opportunity. So I'm thankful. I don't care what other people say, and like whether they're from this country and
Yeah.
this country, blah blah blah. I'm thankful. This is the only one. So we're living the American dream. I hope others can achieve it too. Be inspired by Diego's story, and we'll bring other people that we have lined up great stories. And I'm so impressed for my fellow Latinos that are working really hard in this country.
Thanks for all you're doing, Elias.
Thanks for listening to the American Dream Podcast. Make sure to hit subscribe so you never miss when a new episode drops. If you like this episode, please leave a 6-star review wherever you listen to your podcast. And if you're interested in learning more about my American Dream mission, subscribe to my newsletter linked in the show notes.